All right, my friends, welcome to the show, Stock Charts in Focus. Of course, our product focus show here on the channel where we dig into the site, dive into the tools, show you around the features, and ultimately help you get more value out of stock charts. That is our mission here on this show. Every Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, of course, up on the live channel, but we've also got the YouTube channel. After that, we have all of our episodes that we've ever done posted up there, a great resource for you. And you have the on-demand platform at StockChartsTV.com. Lots of ways to watch. My name is Grayson Roze, Vice President of Operations here at StockCharts.com, and it is wonderful to be with you for another show. I am really excited about this one because this is a trick that I love to show people: how to adjust your charts for dividends or how to keep your charts unadjusted for dividends. Just look at pure price. Take the impact of those payments out of your charts. Very, very easy to do. If you don't know how to do this, we are going to show you how on today's show. But you know, it's something that we all live with. If we're trading stocks, if we're trading ETFs, so many of those things that we're out there holding, especially for longer periods of time, pay dividends. The impact of those dividends, as you're going to see, can be quite enormous. So this is a very, very important show. Now, we're also going to take a look at a couple of the different ways to put dividends on your charts, kind of see dividend information at a quick glance. Dividends, of course, so important for all of us. So we're going to have a couple other tricks packed into today's show in both SharpCharts and ACP. Show you how to get the most out of those platforms and see dividend information right on your charts. So without further ado, let's jump over to the site. Let's get going. All right, my friends. So here we are. We're starting today's show on the SharpCharts workbench. We're going to do the SharpCharts side of this first, and then we'll actually jump over to ACP, show you some of the cool tools that we have over there as well. The first thing that we're going to talk about, though, is how to adjust your charts for dividends, how to leave your charts adjusted for dividends, actually, or how to see unadjusted charts on the site. Now, that trick applies to both SharpCharts and ACP. It applies to really anywhere around the site. There's a very small little trick that you are going to see to adjust your charts, or actually to unadjust your charts for dividends. So we're going to start this with a little bit of a discussion. I got to kind of tell you how things work behind the scenes here at StockCharts. Now, we believe that dividends are massively important. And so we actually spend a lot of time. We have a whole data team working on the back end for all you guys. We spend a lot of time adjusting our data for dividends. That is a common thing that a lot of platforms do as well. So when you look at a long-term chart, you pull up something like SPY, let's say, that does pay a dividend. If you're looking at a long-term chart of that, you're going to see that chart with dividends included in the price, basically. We're going to go back through and adjust that chart for those dividends. Because in reality, if you hold SPY, let's say for 10 years, more likely than not, you are going to take those dividends. You're probably going to reinvest them as well, too, if you're holding that for a long period of time. So we do adjust our charts for dividends by default. Now, what that means is that if you type in SPY or you type in MSFT or AAPL, any of those symbols that do pay a dividend, that chart is going to be adjusted. Now, you might want to see your charts unadjusted for dividends. You might want to think about that separately and just think about the price moves on their own without those dividend payments included. So we have a very, very simple way to do that. All you have to do is type a little underscore before the symbol. So instead of typing SPY, you're going to type underscore SPY. This is very similar to the chart inversion trick that we've talked about on the show as well. If you want to see an inverted chart of anything, like an inverted chart of SPY, all you have to do is type a little minus sign. That's going to invert that chart, flip it upside down. It's also similar to some of the things that we talked about with ratio symbols, for instance. You can separate two symbols on stock charts with a colon. So for instance, AAPL colon SPY. And what that's going to do is compare those two symbols. That's going to give you a ratio chart of Apple versus SPY. So there are a couple of these little kind of symbol tricks that you can use around stock charts. The one that we're going to focus on for today's show is going to be that little underscore that you can type in before the symbol to see an unadjusted chart. Now, that chart is still going to be adjusted for things like splits, which kind of get in the way of a long-term view. So really, typing that underscore is just going to focus on, do you want dividends or do you not want dividends? That's actually a change that we've made somewhat recently. So let's see that in action. It's one thing to talk about it, but let's pull up a chart and actually see what we're talking about. So I've gone ahead and set us up here with a 1-year chart on a percentage basis. You can see this is a percentage scale chart. And as you can see up here in the box, we are looking at SPY. I've just gone ahead and typed that in as normal, as most of you probably do. Straight SPY, no fancy tricks to that symbol. We're going to come down here though, and we're going to add an overlay to this chart. We're going to go ahead and select price, same scale. And in the parameters box, if you're looking down here at that parameters box, what I'm going to do is type in an underscore and then let's do capitals, SPY. So you can see, a little hard to see in that box, but underscore SPY is what I am typing in. Now, we're going to set the color on this to be black. Because remember, if you type in the underscore symbol, that's going to be the unadjusted chart. So I've actually made this one green up top because by default, those symbols are going to be adjusted for dividends. So dividend, payment, money, made the chart green, just to keep these things separate. So we're going to add the same symbol, SPY, but think about what we've done here. We've got our adjusted chart in green. That's the default symbol, SPY. And then we've got our unadjusted symbol, underscore SPY, in black. Now we're looking at a relatively short-term chart here, 1 year of past data on the S&P 500 ETF. You can see that these are relatively close numbers. A little bit of a departure because, again, there's been dividend payments throughout this year, as weak as it has been. So you can see that that dividend paying version of SPY underscore, or without the underscore, is actually up a little bit over the unadjusted chart of SPY. That makes sense because the unadjusted chart is not going to have those dividends included. So let's take this a step further, and instead of looking at 1 year worth of data, let's go back and look at, let's do 25 years of data. So now we can really start to see this impact. So again, remember, the standard symbol, SPY, is going to include those dividends. That's the adjusted symbol. That's what you get kind of by default on StockCharts. That is that green symbol. We can see over the last 25 years, SPY with dividends up 552%. The unadjusted symbol in black, which does not include those dividend adjustments, 318% gain. You can see that big difference. So dividends can make a huge, huge difference. And you really get to choose how you want to see these charts. If you want the adjusted version, just type in that symbol. If you want the fully unadjusted version, no dividends included in that chart, you can just use a little underscore before the symbol, and that is going to pull that up for you. Very, very easy to do. And again, remember, you can do this in SharpCharts. You can do this in ACP. The same trick applies. Now, I'm giving you a little hint on something that's coming really soon. Very soon, we're going to actually be adding some buttons around the different platforms. It's coming to ACP pretty soon and also coming to SharpCharts very soon as well. But we're actually going to add some buttons, some menus, make it easier to make this adjustment kind of on the fly. So something that's coming soon. I'm very excited about it. And of course, this is going to be the place to hear about it when we do make those changes. But there will be a button somewhere on the workbench and on your ACP charts as well to kind of flip between these two modes without having to actually type in the symbol. So keep an eye out for that. For now, though, if you do want those unadjusted charts, underscore symbol is going to give it to you. And as you can see here, the impact of that is really something big. You know, if we do something like XLF, for instance, and then we'll come down here and we'll change our SPY chart to XLF. Now we're looking at adjusted versus unadjusted financial sectors over the last 25 years or so. Again, you know, the impact of those dividend payments is huge. Financials really kind of flat over the last 15 years. But when you account for dividends, it's really a different story. So something to keep in mind as you're going through your charting. If you want to see those dividends, you can just leave that symbol as is. Or if you want to take the impact of those dividends out, just type in an underscore before the symbol. Very, very easy to get there. So that kind of wraps us up with our first part of today's show, the underscore trick, one of my favorites for seeing dividends or not seeing dividends on your charts. Now, speaking of dividends, we might want to keep an eye on those as we're going through our charting, but we might want to just kind of know that they're there, know that a dividend payment has just happened, maybe know that one is coming up, know what the dividend payments are on a percentage basis, know what that dividend yield is. So there are a couple of very cool little tricks that you can use, very cool little chart setup features that you can take advantage of to see dividends, kind of incorporate that into your process on the fly. So we're going to do this in SharpCharts, then we'll jump over to ACP. We'll take a look at some of the cool tools over there as well. First up, what we are going to do, we'll actually get back to our SPY chart, and I'm going to pull up a very, very stripped out chart here. This is just a 1 year chart with a little bit of price data, actually 1.5 year chart. A couple moving averages here, but we just got our candlesticks. So we are looking at an adjusted chart. We've just got SPY up there. The first thing that we're going to look at, though, is a feature that I love to use, especially in SharpCharts, called the full quote. We're going to look at the full quote because it's got dividend information built right into it. So you might be looking at this chart saying, wait, what is that panel up at the top? I don't have that on my charts. This panel right up here, the top of the chart, the header of the chart, might look a little bit different for you. That's because on this chart, I've got something called full quote turned on. Now, full quote, very easy to turn on, very easy to turn off, just so you can see the impact of that full quote. It's a little checkbox down here on the SharpCharts workbench. Make sure that that is checked to have full quote turned on, and that's going to give you this row of kind of additional chart information, just so you can quickly see what it looks like when that is turned off. When you don't have the full quote turned on, that header of the chart is very, very slim. We keep it kind of thin and narrow for you, just the basic price information. If you turn on that full quote, though, again, you're going to get all of that additional price information. Now, this is very, very cool. I love having this on my charts because on top of just kind of looking nice, having bigger price data up here in the top right corner, things like that, it brings in a ton. Obviously, you get bid and ask information. You get things like market cap. That's one that I look at quite a lot. Also, some fundamental stats, PE and earnings per share. You get Scooter in there, which is great, the StockCharts technical rank. But among the group, you get dividend information. So right here in the full quote, you can see two little dividend pieces of data. Annual dividend will tell you what the annual dividend is, and then we'll also calculate that dividend yield, the annual yield for those dividend payments. So when you're pulling up a chart of SPY, if you're wondering, hey, does this pay a dividend? First off, you can quickly see that just by keeping that full quote open. If there are numbers in here, then you know this thing is paying a dividend. If you pull up something like Amazon on the fly and you're saying, wait, does Amazon pay a dividend? I don't remember. Oh, no, it does not, because I can see that right there in the full quote. That's one helpful little thing to know whether or not a symbol that you're looking at actually pays dividends. But it's also really helpful on the fly to be able to know what those dividend payments are going to be. Now, this is trailing 12-month values. We're actually working on a way to customize this a little more, give you the option of seeing TTM values or FTM values, forward 12 months. But for now, these are trailing values, but still gives you on the fly a great sense of kind of what those dividend payments are and what the yield is for those dividend payers. If you pull up something like DGRO, Dividend Growth ETF, you're going to see these numbers flip around a little bit. You're going to see on some stocks that dividend yield is going to be huge, specifically some energy stocks. One that I was looking at the other day had an 8% yield. And some stocks are going to pay a tiny little dividend. You can see all that on the fly, having this included up here in the full quote. So very, very helpful to turn that on and see some dividend information right on your charts, right up at the top. Now, the next one that's very cool to turn on is actually down here in the overlays section on SharpCharts. This is our events overlay. So you come down here to the overlays section, make sure that events is selected, hit update, and you can now see different events right on this chart. Events are things like splits and things like dividends. As you can see along the bottom of this chart, we're now going to put those little markers every time there was a dividend payment, and we're also going to tell you what that dividend was. So very nice to see this. You also do have some options in here. You can actually customize this depending on what you want to see, dividends, splits, things like that. You can actually kind of customize this indicator a little bit. But really nice to be able to see those dividend markers right on the chart, actually have that line drawn straight up to where they are and get those values in there as well. So if dividends are important to you, the events overlay is one that you might want to keep on your charts to keep track of those things. Now, if you're a shorter term trader, maybe that's not as important to you, but if you're a longer term investor, especially, that events overlay is a very, very helpful one to turn on here on SharpCharts. So you combine that little events overlay with the full quote up top. Now you got some serious dividend information going on this chart. Now, our third addition to this chart to bring in even more of a dividend picture is actually going to be the dividends indicator. So down here on SharpCharts in the indicator section, we've actually got an indicator called dividends. Super easy. All you got to do is select it from that menu, hit update, and you can actually position this different places on your charts. If you want it up top, you could position it above that price panel. In this case, we've positioned this down at the bottom of the chart. What this is going to do is actually plot those dividend values over time. So as you can see, this lines up perfectly with that events indicator. It's just going to actually chart those dividend values over time. Now, on a 1 year and 6 month chart, this isn't going to look like much, but if we drag this back out to be, for instance, our 25-year chart of SPY, there you go. Now we can get the full dividend picture. We can see all of those dividend payments, how frequent they are, and we can see what those dividend values have actually done, how they have moved over time. So you can see those dividend payments increasing here on SPY. So this is kind of the full dividend chart here in SharpCharts, if you will. You got full quote turned on. You get to see that yield right there. You've got that events overlay turned on. You can actually see all of those different dividend payments and those values across the bottom of the chart. And you've got your dividends charted over time as well. So again, if dividends are important to you, a couple of tricks here in SharpCharts that you probably want to be aware of, seeing those dividends on your chart. Someone should do a counter, by the way, of how many times I've said dividends on today's show. It's probably up in the hundreds at this point. And it's only going to continue because we're going to jump over to ACP now and take a look at some of the dividend tools over there as well. So I'm actually just going to jump over to the tab that I already have open. Here we are now in ACP. Now, if you're not familiar with ACP, it is our interactive advanced charting platform. Dynamic, very cool. You can scroll through time, kind of move through time fluidly. You can zoom in, zoom out, move all over the place. Very, very cool, very easy to use. This is kind of a complement to SharpCharts. We've introduced this as an alternative. If you like that kind of interactive, fluid, flexible, fast-moving environment, then ACP might be for you. If you like that kind of static view that SharpCharts provides, you find that a little easier to work with, SharpCharts is not going anywhere. In fact, next year, early next year, we're going to be bringing out a new design for the SharpCharts workbench, all of those tools and features around those charts. We've got some fantastic things coming to SharpCharts. I cannot wait to share it with you guys. So I do always like to reinforce this point for people. SharpCharts is not going anywhere. If you like SharpCharts, keep using SharpCharts. We love that platform. We love that you love that platform. And it's only going to get better. ACP also going to only continue to evolve. We've got some fantastic features coming to ACP in the next few months as well. But ACP has definitely come a long way in the last couple of years since it rolled out at the start of 2020. So lots of really cool features. There's a lot of similarities between the two. And again, things like that underscore trick that we talked about, that is going to hold true in SharpCharts and ACP. So if you do want to see, for instance, an unadjusted chart of the S&P 500, same thing applies. You can type in that underscore before the symbol. Now you're looking at an unadjusted chart of SPY. So same thing holds true. Same with the negative sign, the ratio charts, all of that. SharpCharts and ACP, really kind of the same StockCharts experience. You just have to decide, do you like that fluid charting or do you like that kind of static charting? That is up to you. Now, with that out of the way, let's talk about some of the cool dividend charts and dividend tools that we have available here in ACP as well. We don't actually have the dividends indicator yet, but we have some other really, really cool things here in ACP that you can take advantage of, things that I use on my charts as well. So first up, We do still have the concept of the chart header, kind of the thin view versus the bigger view. And in the ACP case, we actually have 3 options, unlike SharpCharts that just kind of has those 2. So I'm actually going to jump in here to the chart settings as a whole. And down here, we've got a menu, up at the top, we've got a menu called chart header. Now we're going to flip through these different options. First up, we do have a slim quote option. As you can see, that's going to keep that quote up at the top of the chart very, very slim. Just going to have basic price information, nice and thin, nice and narrow for you. If you don't want to take up too much of the space on your chart with that header, then the slim quote option is going to be for you. We have a standard quote option, which is kind of the middle ground. And then we have the full quote option, which is going to drop down that panel from the bottom. And again, give you all of that additional information, additional details right there on the chart. Now, the cool thing about ACP, because it is, again, interactive, that's kind of the name of the game here in ACP, you've got this little plus sign. You might be wondering what that is. So if you're in the standard quote and you've got that little plus sign in view, you can actually just hit that plus sign to drop down the full quote panel and then collapse it back when you don't want it anymore. This is really helpful because it means that you don't need to take up all of that space always on your ACP charts. You can still sort of get the benefit of that full quote information, those additional details in that panel, but it's kind of toggleable, if you will. It's optional. When you want it, you can see it. When you don't, you can collapse it down and take it out of view. So really, really nice to have that accessible. The standard quote is going to be kind of the default in ACP, so you will have access to the full quote information if you just hit that little plus sign. And again, if you do like that slim quote, you can do that across the top of your charts as well. But personally, I like to leave it on the standard quote, and then when I want access to that full quote information, I can just drop that down. Now again, same concept, don't have to cover this in full again, but you've got dividend information right there on this chart. We're going to calculate that on the fly. You see those annual dividends, see that yield right there on this chart as well. So same thing that we talked about, and we're actually going to be expanding the full quote here in ACP and in SharpCharts as well. Going to be bringing in some more information, so keep an eye out for that. Earnings dates coming soon to the full quote. So that is our first stop here in ACP, taking a look at how that full quote works. Again, just like the SharpCharts version, you've got that dividend information for you right there. And if you are looking at a symbol, we'll pull up Amazon again, looking at a symbol that doesn't pay a dividend, again, that's going to be blank, so you can quickly see, oh, this doesn't pay a dividend because there's nothing in those 2 fields of the full quote. So really, really easy to see that as you are going through your charting. Now, next up, we're going to turn on our events options here in ACP. Things work a little bit differently than they do in SharpCharts, but the concept is kind of the same. You get those markers across the bottom of the chart. So I'll pull up our chart settings again. By the way, in ACP, you can do that simply by clicking on the price legend right up at the top. If you want to edit anything in ACP, you can just click on the legend to actually edit that. So in this case, when we click on the legend for the price panel, the legend for the main chart, we're going to pull up the chart settings for the entire chart. So that's where you can set things like your y-axis scale. Do you want logarithmic, arithmetic? Set things like your chart header, how many extra bars you want, all of those different settings. Also some of those checkboxes down here for things like price labels, y-axis labels, the last price reference line, something that I like to use on my charts. That's a dotted line going across the chart. So all those settings are maintained over here on the left in ACP. If we scroll down in this panel though, you can see that there is a section called events. So instead of this being an overlay like they are in SharpCharts, in ACP, this is more of a chart setting. So you've actually got this whole space and you got a couple of options, really easy to set this up. Now, the different events that we have are earnings dates, we have dividends, we have splits, we also have predefined alerts, which is going to be on big indexes and some of the sector ETFs, things like that we have predefined alerts for. So you can turn on all of these and you'll get markers for all of that stuff, or you can pick and choose the ones that matter to you or the ones that are relevant. Now, in the case of something like SPY, we're not going to have earnings dates. We'll look at that in just a second. But we do, as you can see, have dividends. So when we turn on that dividends event, you're going to get those little markers across the bottom of the chart. Every time there's a dividend payment, we're going to put one of those little blue D markers right across the bottom of the screen so that you can see those really, really easily. Now, again, Interactivity is the name of the game here in ACP. So when you hover over one of these markers, you're actually going to get to see exactly what that dividend is. It's going to tell you, hey, this is a dividend. It's going to tell you the value, and it's going to tell you the date as well. So you can do that for all of these. You can actually hover over those to get that additional information. Very, very nice, very, very easy to see that on the fly when you put that little dividends indicator on your charts, the dividends events across your charts. Now, the other cool thing is that you actually get options on where you want this positioned. If you want them at the top of the chart, if it makes more sense to you up there, you can do that. Now, it does get in the way of the price legend, but you can see those dividend payments across the top of the chart if you prefer that. You've also got dividend options above the price bar. So if you like those little dotted lines that we had in SharpCharts, you can actually position your event labels here in ACP right above the price bar, so they kind of float right on there. You can do the same thing on top of the price bars. Now they're really pinned to the chart. They do kind of get in the way of the candlestick, so this is not my preferred view, but if you like this view, again, if dividends are important to you, that might be one that you want to use. You might want to really know that those dividends are happening. Personally, I think that the above the price bars look makes a ton of sense. Very cool to see those little markers and see those indicator lines drawn straight down to the day. But I also like to use the bottom of the chart, just kind of the default. Now, this is nice when you have a couple of these event labels turned on. So if we actually turn on earnings dates and then we pull up something like Apple, you can see those dividend markers. You can also see recent earnings reports, though, which is very cool. And the other nice thing about these earnings labels is they actually go out into the future. So here in ACP, if you're wondering, hey, when does Apple report earnings next? Now, it's not going to be for a little while in this case, but it's really easy to just kind of scroll out to the future. Let's say you're looking at your 1 year chart here and you're wondering, hey, when does Apple report earnings? Well, just scroll over until you see it. Oh, cool. It's in late January, and then you can scroll right back to get back to your chart. So very easy to kind of see things on the fly here in ACP. Again, earnings and dividends, those are typically the two that I have turned on my charts. I like to have both of those markers turned on here in ACP, and I keep those kind of pinned to the bottom of the chart. Really nice to be able to see those little labels for those key events that we are all following. So that is going to do it for us here in ACP. Again, we don't have the dividends indicator yet, but that is actually coming soon. But you got some other great tools. You've got your full quote, you've got your dividend markers. Between those and, of course, your unadjusted chart option there to type in the underscore before the symbol. Again, like I mentioned, we're going to be adding some nice handy little features here to ACP very soon. Those will be coming to SharpCharts as well, but we're actually going to have the ability to adjust or unadjust your charts kind of on the fly, just with a little button on the chart. So keep an eye out for that. That's coming in the next month or so. We'll talk about it here on the show when that does land with our next release. But that is going to do it for us here in ACP. Now, that's also going to do it for us here on today's show. I want to thank you so much for joining me on this week's edition of Stock Charts in Focus. Always good to be with you, but especially on an episode like this where we get to highlight some cool tricks, some cool tips, some setup things that you can set on your charts, but also some serious little stock charts tricks, being able to type in that underscore, something I always love to show people. It's a question we get a lot. Hey, I love that the charts are automatically adjusted for dividends, but if I do want to see a chart without those dividends, can I do that? Yep, you can. Just type in an underscore before the symbol, submit that, and you're going to be looking at an unadjusted chart without those dividends calculated in, factored in. Really nice to be able to show people that. So if you didn't know about that trick, hopefully you are now powered up with even more stock charts power there, being able to flip between adjusted and unadjusted charts kind of on the fly. Hopefully you're also going to take some of these event tricks and the full quote, things like that, the dividends indicator, bring those into your process. Again, if dividends are important to you, then hopefully today's show has been really helpful. These are things that I personally use in my approach, especially for following ETFs. I love to have that dividends indicator on there for following ETFs. And those dividends markers as well. Very helpful to keep those pinned to the bottom of your chart, see those when they happen, get a sense of kind of how things have changed over time. And that full quote is one of my favorite features of both SharpCharts and ACP. Having access not just to the dividend information, but market cap, getting the scooter score right in there, Also really helpful to be able to see bid and ask during the market hours. If you're actively trading, actively making decisions, being able to see spreads right there in the full quote, very, very helpful. So hopefully you got a little bit out of that as well. Play around with that full quote option in either platform. If you're not currently using that, I think you'll find it really, really helpful. But hopefully you've had some fun with me on today's show, digging into some tools, digging into dividends in particular. Now, remember, we do this show every Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, up on the live channel, also up on our YouTube channel after that, and of course the on-demand platform at StockChartsTV.com. Lots of ways to watch, but every Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, we're always doing something fun. We're always having a good time on this show, digging into the site, digging into tools and features, tips and tricks, tutorials, all that good stuff. And of course, anytime something is new, we announce it here on Stock Charts in Focus. Always the first place to hear about it. So hopefully you'll tune in next week for another edition. We will have an edition next week, I believe, even with the Thanksgiving holiday. But pretty much every Friday, we're always doing something here on Stock Charts in Focus. So tune in every Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, with me, Grayson Roze, Vice President of Operations here at StockCharts.com, to visit things around the site, help you get more value out of Stock Charts. Again, that's our mission here. So join me every Friday for more great content here on Stock Charts in Focus. Now, I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving if you are celebrating Thanksgiving, if you're with us here in the States. Otherwise, hope you all have a fantastic weekend. I will see you back very soon for another edition of Stock Charts in Focus. And until then, chart on, my friends.